Okay, we are live streaming.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:04 p.m. This is the City Council virtual public comment session. I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank Taylor for helping organize and record and provide technical support to all of us. Again, please mute if you're not speaking. Taylor will. I have asked Taylor to mute everybody that is not speaking just to limit the background noise. She'll be monitoring that. I'll go over a few things about the meeting, read the legal notice, etc. But first, I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Could Councilman Knapp please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp.
Sure.
I'm going to go with the roll call. Alves? Bizaid? Mike Esposito?
Present.
Warren Levy?
Present.
Frank Salvatore?
Present.
Colleen Stanley?
Here.
Bob Tabersack? I think I saw Bob.
He's here.
Oh dear, okay. Irving Fox?
Present.
Tom Priola? Mike Henry?
Present.
Eddie DeGilio's here. Paul Rotello?
Here.
Fred Visconti?
Here.
Elmer Palma?
Present.
Jack Knapp?
Here.
John Esposito?
Here.
Farley Santos?
Here.
Dwayne Perkins?
Present.
Benjamin Cheneys?
Present.
Nancy Camissa?
Here.
And Rich Molinaro?
Here.
I also did see Emil Bizaid on the line.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you. And picture-wise, I also see Bob's picture up there. So let the record show 20 present, 1 absent. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the legal notice into the record, and then we're going to go into, we have a full agenda. There's 5 items for public comment tonight. And then we will go into a committee of the whole on 4 of those items. When it comes to the 5 items for public comment, there's approximately just over 3 dozen items I will be reading into the record. There were others submitted. They're on file with the office. However, they did not include names or addresses as necessary, so they will not be read into the record, but they will be kept in the file. So the legal notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Danbury will hold a virtual public comment session at which parties in interest and citizens will have an opportunity to be heard in relation to the following. Item 1, an ordinance making appropriations for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022, and a resolution levying the property tax for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2022. Item 2, an ordinance appropriating $3 million for public improvements in the 2019-2020 capital budget and authorizing the issuance of $3 million in bonds of the City of Danbury to meet said appropriations and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose. Item 3, the senior tax freeze. Item 4, the 2021 Neighborhood Assistance Act. And item 5, governmental entities code of ordinance section 2-259, copies of which are all available on the City of Danbury City Council webpage at www.danbury-ct.gov/city-council and in the legal section of the Danbury News Times website. Comments should be sent to comments@danbury-ct.gov and must include full name and Danbury address. Email comments by Tuesday, April 13, 2021. If you do not have an email address, please contact your elected council member to provide your comments. Said virtual public comment session will be held on Thursday, the 15th of April, 2021 at 7 p.m., attested to by Jean A. Natal, the legislative assistant. So that is our legal notice of the meeting this evening. So what we'll do is we will take one at a time, and then after each item's public comments are read, I will ask for a motion to close said public comment session for each item. We'll work through all 5 that way and move right along. Do want to let the record reflect that I do see Councilman Alves here, so we do have a full 21-person representation. Thank you.
Mr. President, if I may question,
Sure.
you say that we have 36 comments. Are
Correct.
these letters or are they emails?
These are emails per the instructions to the email box for comments for the public hearing.
Has any of this have to do with the school budget?
Yes, there's a significant, most of them have to do with the school budget, which is item number 1, is where I want to say there's 39 total comments to be read in the record, 38 of which are pertaining to item number 1.
Okay.
I will do my best to get through them all, and again, just bear with me. So item number 1 we're going to start with, which is the ordinance making appropriations for fiscal year beginning July 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022, and a resolution levying the property tax for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. I will start. This comments from Tom Brown, 10 Valerie Lane. Item 1, ordinance making appropriations and levying tax rate. The political appeal of not raising taxes in this election year is undeniable, but I consider it irresponsible to not recognize the increased need for city services and education. The city infrastructure continues to fall apart. Our schools are overcrowded and will get worse. To generate the additional revenue needed to meet Danbury's short and long-term needs, I would rather pay more property tax than borrow more. Servicing city debt is currently at 170% of what it costs to run the Public Works Department. I'm going to be switching to my electronic copy. The next item is from Victoria Mahalik of the board co-president of We Care, 148 Middle River Road. Western Connecticut Association for Human Rights. We Care has proudly been providing disability rights advocacy and education services to Danbury, Connecticut and surrounding towns since 1977. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have not had an interruption of our in-demand services to the residents of the city of Danbury. This was a challenge since we lost funding opportunities as those funds were diverted elsewhere during the pandemic. In addition, opportunities for in-person fundraisers were just not feasible this year. We have been a past recipient of the funding through the city of Danbury and are very thankful to Mayor Cabo for restoring this budget in the 2021-2022 fiscal year. This will have a positive impact on the residents because the robust network of nonprofits in Danbury need this assistance in order to fulfill our respective missions. The next comment is from Richard Janelli at 18 Benson Drive. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Richard Janelli and I reside at 18 Benson Drive. For the record, I am also a Board of Ed member. The city of Danbury has in the past been recognized as one of the best places to live and provide a safe living environment. We are at a turning point in our city to move forward into a more modern environment with all the challenges it takes to get there. Only as a city united with the understanding and planning for our common goals to support our request will we make this happen. Planning ahead and understanding the needs of both sides, the city and education side of the budgets, will now require us to look at some long-term forecasts so we're able as one body attain these goals. We need to think outside of the box for funding resources as well as to advocate and demand our share of ECS money due us now from the state. Too long have the residents replaced the state's responsibility for funding education. Their lack of support has put an enormous strain on our schools. Further, think of addressing the government for the increase in Title I funding has been basically stagnant for the last decade now that all 19 of our schools are Title I. Education will drive the city to success with its rich resources of students and unique academic curriculum. We will be the only city of its kind in the Northeast to offer the Academy Concept curriculum. The educational side of the city will then serve as a positive to support our business community and enhance our real estate markets in a positive way. Let's start to understand each other and work as one to make us successful. Review your options on, on how to fund more of this year's education budget so we don't have severe challenges in the future. Only you can make this happen. Thank you. Richard Janelli. The next comment, I'm a parent of 2 daughters attending Danbury Public Schools. Oh, by the way, this is Patricia Robinson, 39 Saddle Rock Road. For several years, Danbury has done an amazing job helping to educate my daughters. However, our teachers and staff are barely managing to keep things together. The stress of multiple years of not enough funding compared to all the other districts has truly taken its toll. For many years, I've advocated for increased funding for Danbury. I've traveled to Hartford to speak to representatives. I've attended city council meetings. I've attended local meetings. I've gone live on Facebook to share our current funding situation and to ask for support for more funding. Yes, the state needs to increase our funding and implement a fully funded education cost sharing formula, but Danbury also has to contribute to our ever-growing population of students. Please approve the Danbury Board of Education's funding request. Our teachers, staff, and students desperately need it. This is from Christina Iljazi, 52 South King Street. As a mom of 3 Danbury Public Schools students, 7th, 9th, and 10th grades, I have seen over the last 11 years money spent in the wrong areas. The schools are massively overcrowded and are bursting at the seams. Teachers are overworked and underpaid. Those teachers who actually care are silenced by their principals. It is time to clean house and really listen to the parents. My kids have yet to see the inside of a school building and how things are going. I'm pretty sure that won't change for the 2021-2022 school year. It makes you want to pull the kids out and send them to private school. This next comment is from Christina Heffel from 9 John Perry Drive. I am urging you to restore the $4 million requested by the Danbury Public Schools. Our school system is in dire need of funding requested. Our children are falling behind more than ever due to schools not being open for in-person learning. Even today, we are only open in hybrid model where our secondary students only receive 10 to 14 hours of in-person instruction. This is unacceptable. We are constantly being told it's not possible to open schools due to the overcrowding issues, yet almost every other district in the state is moving to full in-person learning this year. We are in the vicious cycle of not supporting our schools adequately and digging a deeper and deeper hole. We are continually at the bottom of district per pupil expenditure. Our kids are suffering and our system is suffering. I ask that you reflect on why we continually send the message that students of Danbury are less deserving than students in other communities. It is simply unacceptable and time for this community to come together to fix our schools. This year has been woefully inadequate. It is not the teachers' fault as they are repeatedly asked to do more with less. We have to stop this vicious cycle of underfunding our schools and prioritize our children that have suffered so much over the last 13 months. I am an educator in another Fairfield County district, and it is so disheartening to see how education is not prioritized in this community and students are continually left behind and given less educational opportunities. I urge you to work with the Board of Ed and fully fund our schools so we can begin to pick up the pieces. Let's see. This next comment is from Jocelyn Dorr from 29 Clearview Avenue. Hello, as a parent of an 8-year-old and 10-year-old, my priority is that my children are back in school full time. I have to pay more in taxes to pay for modular classrooms or more teaching assistants, so be it. My children are suffering because of the ongoing hybrid learning. As more teachers are vaccinated, I want city officials to make public assertions that it's a priority to get the kids back to school full time in the fall. I am pro teacher and pro science, and I am also pro student. And our surrounding towns have been back full time for months. Vaccinate teachers and get the students off the Chromebooks and back in school. Let's not waffle all summer. Make the statement now. This comment is from Christina Sweeney at 19 Ironwood Drive. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed city council members, I am writing to you as a taxpayer and parent in Danbury. As elected officials, I know you take your responsibilities involving the city budget seriously. Today, I'm writing to urge you to amend the mayor's budget to include more financial support for our schools. Over the past 10 years that my own children have attended Danbury Public Schools, the city-approved budget for education has fallen short a total of $48 million of what was requested and approved by the Board of Ed. This pattern of underfunding is shameful for a district that continues to grow. While I understand that part of the problem in education funding lies with the state, the city bears responsibility for the quality of its schools. I have real concerns about our schools that need to be dealt with this year, not in 2024. I am the parent of a freshman and a seventh grader. I see firsthand overcrowded and under-resourced schools, sports programs that are not adequately funded, and counselor caseloads in the high 300s, far above the optimal number for a secondary school. I am very concerned about the future of our city if we do not start to seriously fund and plan for the long-term funding of our schools. I also have real concerns as a taxpayer and property owner in the city of Danbury. Like you, I expect my elected officials to be fiscally responsible when it comes to spending tax dollars. Fiscally responsible means thinking long-term about the investments we make in our schools and local infrastructure and planning accordingly. It does not mean freezing taxes for 3 years. The mayor's budget relies heavily on one-time funds for the federal COVID relief package, and this is in no way to build a budget. The district has to use that money to address issues related to the pandemic, but it cannot be used for operating costs that continues to rise. I don't envy your position and am truly grateful for the work that you put in as dedicated public servants. Part of being in this position, however, means making difficult decisions. From my vantage point, our children have been on the losing end of these decisions for far too many years now. And if we don't properly plan and fund our schools, the situation will only become more dire. Thank you for your service, and I support amending the city budget to increase funding for our schools. Excuse me one second. Good evening. My name is Kathy Snow, and I live at 6 Linden Crest Drive in Danbury. I am asking that the Common Council support the school budget in full as requested by the Danbury Public Schools. I have lived in Danbury for over 20 years. My family enjoys all Danbury has to offer. My son even chose Terrawile Park as the beneficiary of his Boy Scout Eagle project. In addition, we are active volunteers in community. Danbury is a great city, so great that Danbury is one of the few cities in the state where students attending the public schools have been increasing at an unprecedented pace. I understand you have a big job in determining the city's budget and that there are many facets to the decisions you have to make, but I also know that the school budget has been woefully underfunded in the past, and the amount the mayor has discussed a few days ago will not even cover the cost of operating the schools. Please think of the future success of our city. One of the main things that makes a city successful are the schools. When someone isn't thinking of moving to a town, one of the first questions asked is, how are the schools? Great schools make our young children into leaders. Great schools help to maintain or even increase home values. The great schools also encourage young people to stay, and raise their own family here. Great schools help build businesses in the city. Great schools make our city shine. Great schools mean hope for us and our children. Members of the Common Council, you have the opportunity to make Danbury schools great. Fully fund the school budget. It is time our future leaders get the funds they deserve. This next comment is Matthew J. Sweeney, 19 Ironwood Drive. My name is Matthew Sweeney, and I'm a taxpayer and parent with 2 children in the Danbury Public Schools. I am asking that you allocate more funds for public education in the city budget. As a professional school counsel, I can say with certainty the ratios of counselors to students are much too high at the middle and high schools, and this puts our students at a distinct disadvantage. We need additional counselors to help support our students chart their path through school and towards careers and college plans. Now more than ever, our students need increased social emotional support as we transition back into after what has been a traumatizing past year for many families and community members. Financial support for Danbury Public Schools is an investment in the city and needs to be seen as such. It's no secret that well-performing schools impact property values and thus tax revenues. We are taxpayers and property owners, so we understand the desire to keep taxes low. However, underfunding the schools comes at a real cost to residents and the community as a whole. Not only will it harm our property values, but it puts our community in jeopardy for the future. We need strong schools to educate our future entrepreneurs, business owners, and the workforce in general. I hope you see funding our schools properly as an investment in the city and act accordingly. I strongly support increasing the proportion of education funds in the city budget. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry, this next one is from, good morning. My name is Megan Gudotti, and I live at 27 Topfield Road in Danbury. I have been a Danbury resident since my husband and I bought our first house here in 2010. We have 3 children currently in the schools. My husband and I work in the field of education and both did research into Danbury schools and surrounding towns before making the decision to stay here and raise our family. We believe in the potential of Danbury schools and the opportunities they can provide for our children, as well as the countless others that live in this community. I fear, however, that all of that potential and those opportunities are quickly vanishing due to lack of proper funding. We all know that the population of Danbury is continuing to increase at a drastic rate, as is the enrollment in the public schools. The city council is not providing the district with the necessary financial means to adequately meet the ever increasing flux of students. Put simply, our students are suffering, and they are suffering this year more than ever. Superintendent Dr. Sal has stated time and time again this year that the reason Danbury has been unable to increase the number of in-person school days is due to space constraints. Due to the lack of funding for many years in a row, the schools have been unable to bring students in full time and still meet CDC guidelines. We simply have too many students per class. I have a son in second grade and 2 daughters in kindergarten who have spent less than 30 days of school this year in an actual classroom. Not because I chose to keep them home, keep them distance learning, but because that was all the school has been able to provide. How is this acceptable to the city council? How is this fair to our children? Mayor Cabo was recently quoted in the News Times article saying, "It's not like we're kicking the can down the road, but we are aware the can is down there and we have to fill it when it's down there." I beg to differ, as kicking the can down the road is exactly what the city council has done for the past few years, and is exactly what they are choosing to do again this year if they do not fully fund the education budget. At what point does the education of Danbury children become a priority? At what point does the sustainability of our community become a priority? Schools are the lifeblood of a community, and by continuously denying these funds that our schools desperately need, you are setting up our entire community to fail in the years to come. Thank you, an extremely concerned and frustrated parent. This next comment is from Teresa Wilbeshower from 1 Ezra Road. As a longtime resident of Danbury since the 70s, I have seen the growth and welcome the diversity. I would like a specific outline of what items will be cut in the next 3 years in regards to the West Side Academy. What is there now, and what will no longer be there within 3 years? As a social worker myself, I am aware of the lack of longevity a grant can last, or easily it can be eliminated, no matter how good the program is. I would also like an idea what the high school would look like 5 years from now. What will high school look like when classes are cut, what programs cut? Having a senior now and being active in the PTO, the community has been very supportive with many projects we initiated. Additionally, as a homeowner and taxpayer, I'd like an idea what % per year my taxes will increase. Child going to West Side in middle school next year, senior graduating Danbury High 2021. The next comment is from Patricia Madden of 47 Woodside Avenue. I would like to let the board and town know that they do not have my support to increase the budget. My name is Elizabeth Peralta. I live at 47 Woodside Ave in Danbury and have 2 children who attend AIS. We need to fully fund the school budget. We have underfunded the budget long enough. Our kids deserve this. Hello, my name is Mark Sorrentino of 20 Jeanette Road, and I am not in favor of this proposal. The mayor and city officials need to provide a zero-based budget approach and make hard decisions not to fund non-essential or dead money programs. In addition, the city is responsible for this influx due to the overdevelopment of condos without fully understanding or anticipating the implications of this growth to our school system. The budget proposal will increase our taxes unnecessarily, as it is the easiest way to get funding. Let's roll up our sleeves and do the work needed to self-fund like other businesses would need to do. So this next comment is from Jade O'Connell at 17 Fur Drive. I'm writing today as a parent of 3 school-age children. I write to encourage our leaders to support the betterment of our community, to encourage Danbury to take the steps needed to play a positive role among our neighboring towns, to create a place where our children are proud to live, where a diverse community comes together to thrive on all fronts. Education of our youth is the foundation of our community, and we are currently failing our children. The consistent level of underfunding by our city for schools indicates that we pay no mind to lack of space, lack of teachers, and lack of supplies. We are losing wonderful and talented families every day to this issue. Why are we not making the changes necessary? I've been told that due to COVID, the city cannot provide the necessary funding to our schools. This is a smokescreen. This has been a problem long before COVID. Danbury government has provided monies even close to what has been requested by Danbury Public Schools for the last 10 years. Sorry, it's not provided. This has created a situation where our teachers in schools are struggling every day, and the hole is just getting deeper. How is a district who is constantly trying to catch up ever get ahead? Why do our kids have to be out of school for 1.5 years? Because our lack of funding has not allowed enough space for our ever increasing enrollment. We need to look toward the future and plan for it now. We desperately want our leaders to see the connection between a successful school district and a successful community. As a small business owner and parent, the past actions of our local government do not make me confident in the choices being made for Danbury. It is true that we are owed funding at the state level. That does not change the fact that we also need to support our schools locally. We're the lowest funded district at the city level. A budget that does not even cover operating costs for the year is embarrassing. You have the chance as to set Danbury on a great path. Let's be an example of what to do instead of an example of what not to do. Please vote to support the Board of Education approved budget for our schools. Our administrators and teachers are giving their all, but need more support, community support. It is time. The next item is from Keith Manning at 12 Clapboard Ridge, Unit 2. To Mayor Cavo and City Council, as a Danbury resident, a Danbury teacher, and as a Danbury father, I must ask that you fully fund the school budget. There is no doubt that no one wants to pay more taxes, particularly during a pandemic. However, the budget presented to Mayor Cavo and City Council members is fiscally irresponsible. We are putting ourselves in a position to pay even more in years to come if we don't act now. We have kicked the can down the road for years. I don't think Danbury Public Schools can survive another year of the status quo. As a teacher, I've been disheartened by the lack of investment the city is willing to make in its public schools. We are told to do more and more with less as the years go on. We have been told that it's the state's fault. We have been told to rely on federal money and grant money. Meanwhile, our classes continue to grow and our buildings and infrastructure continue to decline. I will always love my job and love teaching the children of Danbury, but I am sad to say that while I always give my all to my students in DPS, I can't see my family and I staying here when my son approaches kindergarten. It breaks my heart to think of not living where I teach and not being a resident of this wonderful community. I only share that to say that Danbury has the best teachers and people I've ever worked with, but amazing teachers still need resources and smaller class sizes to succeed. Please fund the education budget. We can do amazing things for the future of the city. Please let this be the turning point where we show everyone that we are willing to invest in our children and the future of this fine city. Excuse me 1 second. This next one is Mr. Corsino. I am in support of school funding for the Danbury Public School District. I believe Danbury School District is facing many challenges. School population is increasing. There's a high demand for extra services for students who need extra support academically. The Danbury School District needs more paraeducators, ESL teachers, counselors, and social workers. Our kids deserve an option for a better education. Children are the future of this country. By investing in our children's education is contributing to the country's development and creating a literate and self-sufficient society. I'm sorry, that was a quote by Rick Corsino as part of this comment. This comment was from Martha Anaya of 8 Rose Lane, apartment 26-14. This next one is from William Sweeney, 19 Ironwood Drive. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed city council members, hello, my name is William Sweeney and I am a 9th grader at Danbury High School. For my entire life, I have been going to Danbury Public Schools. From Mill Ridge in kindergarten to now Danbury High School, I have met and worked with amazing teachers, administrators, and friends. But unfortunately, one problem remains consistent. A problem forces teachers to work from carts or calls on counselors to be responsible for too many students and does not give me, my friends, and the students of Danbury the necessary tools needed for the advancement of our education. The ever-present problem of an overcrowded and underfunded education system in Danbury. As a student of Danbury, all I ask is for the necessary amount of funds needed for my school. I may only be 15 and not of voting age, but that does not mean my issues and concerns can be shoved under a rug. Education is a pillar of our community, our society, and our civilization. Education is the foundation that builds a community. We need to be given the necessary tools in order to build the foundation so that our education can be strong as it should be. All I ask is that you give the students and teachers of Danbury the tools needed to learn and inspire. Therefore, as council members, please fulfill your duty by increasing city funds for education. I support amending the budget to provide additional funds for schools in Danbury. Thank you for your time and consideration. This next comment is from Amy Matrina at 24 Carriage House Drive. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed council members, as the mother of 2 Danbury Public School children, as well as a Danbury Public Schools related service provider, I implore you to pass the Board of Education budget. Support our children. They are our future neighbors and members of the workforce. Budgets demonstrate community values. Protect our property values with a positive investment. Good schools increase equity and draw on businesses to invest in our city. We have to catch up. It is time for all of us to come together, school, city, Board of Ed, and community. We understand that the federal government is helping us respond to the crises from COVID, but we also need to fill our responsibility for educating our children, preparing them to become contributing members of Danbury, ensuring long-term prosperity and well-being to all. We all need to rise up from the lowest per pupil education contribution in the state. We currently are still 169 out of 169 municipalities. Increased investment will address overcrowding, reduce student to teacher ratios, and ensure adequate support for all of our diverse students and families. We are counting on you to represent us and vote in support of the Board of Education budget this year. This next comment is from Deborah Bussman of 19 Joes Hill Road. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed Common Council members, how can Danbury schools continue to survive at the back of the pack? Our children deserve to get the best education. We should not have to settle for the lowest funding in the state. Please restore and fully fund the Board of Education budget. We are counting on you to represent us and vote in support of the Board of Education this year. This next comment is from Lisa Marsilio, 10 Haystown Road, apartment 25. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed Common Council members, I'm a special education teacher and resident of Danbury. Please restore and fully fund the Board of Education budget. We are counting on you to represent us and to vote in support of the Board of Education budget this year. Joy Craig, 2 Flirtation Drive. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed Common Council members, we're counting on you to represent us and vote in support of the Board of Education budget this year. As a Connecticut educator and Danbury High School parent, education and its appropriate funding is a priority for me and my family. Please restore and fully fund the Board of Education budget. This next comment is from Curtis Dara IV, 38 Padanaram Avenue, number 26. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed Common Council members, as a school counselor with a caseload of 375 students at Westside Middle School Academy, I believe it is essential to pass this education budget because for people like me, whose job is to take care of the mental health of others, I'm finding it increasingly difficult to maintain stability. The academic, social, and emotional concerns for these students pre and even post-pandemic is high of need. This must happen. We can no longer sustain. Let's see. Andy Nunn, 8 Maple Crest Drive. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed Common Council members, please pass the Board of Education budget. As a retired, well-received Danbury educator, I am witnessing a problem that has long needed correction. If we continue to ignore the lack of progress that our students demonstrate on state exams, we ignore our future. Invest in the children now, let them flourish, and our community will create productive leaders for the future. We can become a shining example of how diversity works in a city that celebrates multiculturalism, or we sit back and ignore the present status of our youth. We fell behind and failed our kids. We have to catch up and immediately by funding schools that effectively service all our kids. We need to rise up from the lowest per pupil education contribution in the state. This is an appalling fact. We are currently 169 of 169 municipalities. Increased investment will address overcrowding, reduce student to teacher ratios, and ensure adequate support for all our diverse students and families. We were once considered a #1 place to live, but if schools continue to fail our kids, we slide down to undesirable because we ignore the action desperately needed. Neighboring towns boast about their education systems, and we have sadly been ignoring ours. Let's be an example of how an eclectic group of people rise up. Glenda M. Armstrong, 224 Franklin Street Extension. Danbury is fortunately a growing community. This indicates our future is bright and vibrant if we make the right decisions now. Education is key to that bright future. Inadequate funding of our schools is irresponsible as a community. I urge each council member to vote to support the budget submitted by the Board of Ed. Your decision to support the budget submitted by the Danbury Board of Ed is a key ingredient to a bright and vibrant future in this community. Greg Williams and Michelle Williams of 56 Judith Drive. To whom it may concern, as parents of an elementary school student, we have witnessed the devastating setbacks virtual learning has had in our own home firsthand, both academically and for social and emotional development. We strongly support the Board of Education budget request to expand the needed staff to serve students in what is going to be a very difficult period as we reorient students into in-person learning. It is going to take years for the young people of Danbury to rebound from over a year of disruption to their education, and the services, supports, and size of classes are going to be indispensable to our community's educational recovery. This moment requires a deeper investment in the education of our young people. Please fund the Board of Education request in full. This next comment is from Paul Salvatore at 20 Brighton Street. I am writing to express my displeasure in the funding of this year's budget to the Board of Education. This is not just a major problem this year. This has been many years of underfunding the school budget. Danbury has not reached its capacity on building housing in our city, which is putting a huge strain on the capacity of all of our current schools. This year has proved during this pandemic on what it is going to do to our students and parents not being able to go to school full time. I grew up going to Danbury Public Schools, and I have a child in the high school. Danbury Board of Education has done a great job in giving a student a great education with their limited funds. But at this rate of funding, the ones who are going to eventually suffer are our kids. Please do what is right and smart moving forward in better funding our schools. Thank you. Excuse me. Dear Mayor Cavo and esteemed City Council members, my name is Laurie Woodruff. I live at 57 Middle River Road, and I'm a Danbury Public Schools 4th grade teacher. I'm writing to you to express my horror over the city's decision to not fully fund the Board of Education budget. I've been an employee of Danbury Public Schools for 25 years, and the needs of our students in 2021 have vastly increased from 1996. Our social workers have stretched beyond what they can do in a single day. Students who need to be restrained or who have severe emotional needs are an occurrence every day. When this happens, our social worker is taken from the other 335 students in my building for hours. Often other staff members are needed for assistance, which pulls them away from their other responsibilities. We simply don't have the extra bodies in our school to handle this. Imagine that one social worker for 336 kids in a school building, and it's even worse at the middle and high school levels. Our school system needs a fully funded Board of Education budget to hire the appropriate staff to meet the various needs of all of our students. COVID has shown us that our students need as much social emotional support as possible. Teachers have been working every day to offer the support for our students while teaching in class, hybrid students, and live streaming students all at the same time. We have done everything that has been asked of us and more. We have turned ourselves into pretzels to try and engage our students. Due to the city's lack of funding of our Board of Education budget for nearly a decade, there has been little to nothing left for teaching of science and social studies at the elementary level. I researched online and found a science curriculum that works well for our students. However, all the supplies for the science activities I purchased out of my own pocket for all the students in my grade level. Is that what now is expected of teachers to do? Are you cutting the Board of Ed budget? I've dedicated my life to the children and I am blessed to call my students. When you look at your oath to become a city council member, you swore to provide for all the citizens of Danbury, and that includes Danbury's children. The Board of Ed has compromised its need for too many years. Danbury is already dead last in per pupil spending. To compromise our legitimate needs any further would only put students, your students, our students, at even more of a disadvantage. Thank you for doing what is best for all of Danbury students and fully funding the Board of Education budget. This comment is from Gladys Cooper, chairperson of the Danbury Board of Education at 124 Coal Pit Hill Road. Danbury Board of Education budget. I support the Board of Education budget request of $13 million. We hope the mayor and the Common Council will rethink, reallocate funds to the Board of Education budget. Over the past 10 to 12 years, the Board of Education budget has always been cut short by the original request. The district cannot continue to provide the quality of education needed for all students in our schools. Please look at the allocation for the Board of Education budget and support the budget more. Good evening, council members. I serve on the city zoning commission. However, I am writing as a concerned citizen of Danbury rather than a commissioner. I am concerned by the short-sightedness of the education budget. Excuse me. The city of Danbury is going through an incredible economic boom. Projections estimate that the city has grown by 3,000 residents in the past year due to pandemic urban migrations. Houses are selling very quickly, and those new residents will hopefully be planning to spend many years in our community and have families enjoy our city. Our city's 19 public schools have been systematically defunded or for the better part of the past decade. Meanwhile, during the same period, the population of Danbury Public Schools has grown each year significantly, including a scenario where children showed up unexpectedly that caused our schools to burst at the seams back in 2019. Sure, the city had short-term band-aids for an arterial ulcer, but these unforeseen issues could have been avoided with proper foresight and contingency planning through complete funding. In a recent News Times article, the city's finance director stated, "Now, being in the middle of a pandemic is not the time for us to do anything new." I'm afraid I have to disagree with this statement. Our city leadership has the incredible opportunity to meet this moment, and I worry if our leadership does not take the bold action needed, we will fail our residents. Danbury is already one of the lowest funded municipalities in terms of per pupil spending. Now is the time to fix this issue. We need to take bold action in support of our schools fully and restore our public schools' chronic problems. Fully funding the schools is an investment that is worth taking and is cheaper than the consistent short-term Band-Aid. When we focus on students' needs rather than high administrative salaries, we will create an education system that prepares tomorrow's leaders with the tools and skills they need to face tomorrow's most significant challenges. We need to meet this movement and prioritize educating our future. I have two fears if we fail to meet this moment. One, we will disservice our community in the short term by continuing to defund schools. And two, we will fail to retain our new residents and we will lose the momentum our city has desperately needed for a while. Thank you for your time, consideration, and leadership. Let's work together to meet the future needs of our community today. This was from Ryan Hawley at 12 Rodline Road. This next comment is from, and I believe there are approximately 8 left, so bear with me. This is from Christine Halfar, 8 Sellers Hill Road. To the mayor and members of the city council, my name is Chris Halfer, and my family and I have lived in Danbury for over 20 years. I have watched in dismay as the annual budget process has allowed our city to fall to the absolute last place in per pupil spending in the state. Our schools are overcrowded, programs that other districts take for granted have been dropped, and crucial staff have been cut to negligent levels. We are now at a point of possibly losing our accreditation. Sounds like we must be desperately poor or so highly taxed that there is not a penny of leeway. Neither are true. Yet the claim is made that because of COVID, we could not possibly raise taxes to meet the modest request of $4 million, an increase of about $300 per student. Nonsense. At 27.6, Danbury has the lowest mill rate in the surrounding area. Newtown, Bethel, New Fairfield, and Reading all have rates in the 30s. Ridgefield's rates at 28.1 is the only town close to Danbury's. We must meet our obligations to educate the students of our community. Trying to hide behind COVID is cowardly and dishonest. Thank you for your chance to weigh in on this crucial decision for our children and our community. Sorry, this next one is from Janice M. Gomez Anderson of 25 Eastgate Road in Danbury. Dear Mayor Cavo and members of the City Council needs to act now to begin to remedy the underfunding of our city schools. It's been said that the moral test of government is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children. The pandemic has brought into stark relief that Danbury is an overcrowded and chronically underfunded school district. Your moral test is now. I'm a parent of 3 children in Danbury Public Schools, 2 in 5th grade and 1 in 2nd grade. My husband and I are also homeowners and taxpayers, and I'm a substitute teacher in Danbury. I write to urge each and every one of you to amend the proposed city budget to include more funds for education and grant the budget request of the Board of Ed. Our family rented in Danbury for many years. 2 years ago, when we were looking to purchase our home, we wanted to remain in Danbury because of the diversity of its population. We knew that compared to surrounding districts, Danbury schools would offer our children a richer life experience reflective of society as a whole. They have had excellent teachers in the district, and we know that Danbury High has a tremendous array of course offerings. Sadly, though, for too long, the budget of the Danbury schools has not kept pace with student needs. The average annual budget increase in the past 10 years have just about kept pace with the consumer price index, 1.8 versus 1.73%. This might be viable if Danbury had the same number of students in its classrooms as they did 10 years ago, which it does not. Over the next 5 years, Danbury anticipates increase of its population by another 750 students. Our budget needs to keep pace with our student population and that population need. The city cannot encourage people to move to Danbury and build single-family and multifamily and housing without increasing the school budget to the very least to reflect the increase in student population. As a parent and a substitute, I can see that our classrooms are far too crowded. America is a great educational experiment. Unlike many countries, we educate all children, and for the most part, we do so in one classroom, children of all levels and skills. To do this successfully, we need smaller class sizes, and we need to address all students' needs from the specific to the general. A specific example of something missing in Danbury schools is the only offering of children identified as gifted is an enrichment program on Saturdays for a small part of the year. There is nothing built into everyday curriculum at the elementary level for those ability exceeds what is offered in the classroom. My fear is that this will lead to boredom and hating school. And a general example is the basic school equipment is sometimes funded by the PTO, not the district. I was part of a PTO that was proud it had purchased Promethean boards for classrooms. In the 21st century, this is a basic tool that every classroom should have and should not depend on fundraising by parents. I'm aware that I will likely see a property tax increase if the school budget is raised. I am fully prepared to pay for that increase. If I were not willing to, what would that say about me? As I said at the beginning of this letter, your moral test is now. What will your vote say about you? Please vote to grant the Board of Ed request for funding for our children's education. This next one is from Mary Consoli of 42 Tammany Trail. Dear Honorable Joseph M. Cavo, Mayor, City of Danbury, and the City of Danbury Common Council. I am writing to state my disappointment in the decision not to fund the Board of Education request in the city's budget presented April 6th. As a taxpayer and senior citizen on a fixed income, I can appreciate the consideration of raising taxes. But as a parent of a Danbury High School graduate and a resident of Danbury since 1974, the decision to not recognize the needs of the Danbury education system, is putting a Band-Aid on an open wound. You have continued to kick the can down the road. This has been happening for 20 years. This has allowed the concept of charter school to find fertile ground in Danbury. The city of Danbury should take responsibility to educate its children. There will be a tsunami in the not too distant future, which will be difficult to manage, if not impossible. No one wants to have their taxes raised, but a little each year for education only would have avoided any crisis. My daughter graduated in 2002 with an excellent diverse education, which allowed her to be accepted to many Division I colleges. Unfortunately, I have learned through firsthand conversations with other parents and teachers the demise of this quality education. Danbury should not be proud of being 169 out of 169 in the state. I'm urging you to reconsider your decision and making educating the children of Danbury a long-term priority starting now, not continue to use one-time fixes. This next comment is from Patricia and Donald Whedon of 85 Middle River Road. My husband and I are longtime residents and taxpayers. We have 2 grandchildren who are homeowners and parents of preschool children. They are very concerned about the long-time underfunding and overcrowding of the school. They too pay property taxes. Danbury is trying to attract homeowners who are extending their search to our area because of the pandemic. It has been many years since I've sold real estate, but I can assure you that corporate or other potential buyers with children have a number one criteria: an excellent, highly rated school system, and taxes are a lesser concern. I understand that some of us old timers may find this uncomfortable, but education has not been a priority for many years and affects our desirability. This next one is from Andrea Gardner, 112 Deer Hill Avenue. Dear elected Danbury leaders, the Board of Education has respectfully requested $149 million to fund the upcoming Danbury Public School budget year. This request was painstakingly reviewed by members of the Board of Ed and Danbury Public School administrators representing teachers and other staff who have been doing too much with less funding year after year after year. It's important that we acknowledge the thought, care, and due diligence that has gone into making this request. I know how much I appreciate the tireless work of everyone involved in getting to this point. While this request is an increase over last year's, crafters of the budget applied outside federal and state funding sources tied to the pandemic where permitted, and it actually includes a $4 million reduction. But there is still a gap. It is a gap that our city leaders created, and unless the city budget covers the shortfall, our leaders will be making the decision to cut education when Danbury is at a critical crossroad. The business as usual approach of the past 10 plus years of not adequately funding public education, despite a steadily growing student population, has forced the district to make significant cuts year after year after year. This approach is untenable in the best of circumstances. Danbury continues to grow at an unprecedented rate, and the times demand that we now do what we can to keep pace. To do otherwise is negligence on the part of the mayor and city council members. Please fund the education budget as requested. And this next one is from Annie Riddle of 30 Washington Avenue. Dear Honorable Joseph M. Cavo, Mayor and City of Danbury Common Council members, as a longtime member of the education community in Danbury and resident, I feel the responsibility to advocate for the health of Danbury Public Schools and for our students. Nothing in life remains at a standstill. As our city develops and grows, we must keep up with eventualities growth presents by equipping our children and young adults with education that they will need as adults. Growth is demographically a predictor of prosperity. If the city fully funds the Board of Ed budget as requested, the city will be acknowledging that a strong public education is the foundation upon which growth can prosper. The proportion of the city budget invested in Danbury Public Schools has decreased over the past several years, then has remained flat for the last 2 years. Danbury schools cannot continue to provide the same or better education without adequately funding. The amount the city is proposing is the same percentage rate equal to that of the last 2 years. It's simply not enough. Fully funding the board budget would demonstrate that our city government is forward-thinking and recognizes that the cost of providing quality programs, adequate facilities, and staffing will rise from 1 year to the next, especially in a time of growth. I trust the educational needs and costs as presented in the Board of Ed budget and ask the mayor and city council members to do the same. Dear Common Council members, my name is Phillip Kern and I live at 25 Belmont Circle in Danbury. I'm a retired firefighter from the city of Danbury and a former city councilman having served 12 years. I'd like to support the mayor's proposed budget with no increase of our property taxes. At this time, with all us reeling from COVID virus of the past year and the national economy at a standstill, the taxpayers cannot endure an increase. All the city departments have agreed to take no increase in their budgets. As usual, the school board asks for outrageous increases. What drives me crazy is all the money in the past the city has paid for the schools outside of the school budget. The city has replaced roofs, windows, and furnaces, etc. I believe the answer for the school board of ed is for the Danbury delegation to demand Danbury's fair share of the state funds. Thank you for your service to the city of Danbury, also for your time on this matter. Phillip Kern. And that was the last comment, folks. I do appreciate everybody that took the time to submit comments. And I do appreciate everybody on the dais and tuning in your patience with me in reading the comments. Thank you. So,
Mr. President,
I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Salvatore?
just a question. Could we get copies electronically of not only the ones you read, but the ones that are going into the file that weren't read tonight?
Yes, sir. Not a problem.
Mr. Chair, one question as well, sir.
Councilman House?
Thank you. Earlier, you mentioned that there were some that couldn't be read in because they were misinformation, understandably understood. Can you give us a number on what was submitted that couldn't be read, or is that not possible?
I do not have those numbers off the top of my head. I just know that they are part of the record, and we can follow up on that with you.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. So with no further public comments on item number 1, I'll entertain a motion to close the virtual public comment session for item 1.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Levy,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Tabersack, all in favor of closing item number 1 comment session?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstained? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, I will open that public comment session. This is for an ordinance appropriating $3 million for public improvements in the 2021-2022 capital budget and authorizing the issuance of $3 million of bonds of the city to meet said appropriations and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose. This item, we received 1 public comment. I will read into the record. This is from Tom Brown of 10 Valerie Lane. Item 2, ordinance appropriating $3 million for public improvements, borrowing $3 million to pay for it. What are the specific public improvements that borrowing another $3 million will buy? Who drafts the list of public improvements targeted for this borrowed money? For example, do we maintain a comprehensive list of city streets describing their current condition with a price tag of what it will cost to bring them up to standard? Is this list prioritized? Who sets the priorities? Can a taxpayer find out what the last multi-million dollar public improvement bond actually produced? Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your comments. With no further comments being submitted for item 2, I'll entertain a motion to close the public comment session.
So moved.
I see Paul
Second.
made the motion. Who seconded?
I will, Mr. President.
Mr. Esposito, Mr. John Esposito seconded the motion. I'll try your minds. All those in favor of closing the session on item 2, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. I will open item number 3 for public comment, Senior Tax Freeze Code of Ordinance, Section 18-12.1.1. There were no public comments submitted for this item. I will entertain a motion to close the public comment session for item 3.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Perkins,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Fox. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item 4, the 2021 Neighborhood Assistance Act. I will open the public comment session for this item. There are no comments that were submitted for this item. I will entertain a motion to close the comment session on item number 4.
Motion.
So moved by Mr. Molinaro, seconded
Second.
by Mr. Knapp. All those in favor of closing the item number 4?
Aye.
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 Anybody in the negative? No abstentions. Item passed unanimously. Thank you. And lastly, item
Point
5.
of order.
I'm sorry?
Point of order. Mr. DiGiulio, I'm sorry. I was looking back in my notes from the meeting. I thought item number 4 was tabled at the council meeting.
No, the item that was tabled at the council meeting was the downtown tax district. And then that's
Okay,
brought back
all
to the
right.
table. Yep, it's item 4, but from a different agenda.
Okay, I got it now.
No problem. So we'll move on to item number 5, governmental entities, ordinance section 2-259. I will open that public comment session. There were no comments specifically for item number 5, so I will entertain a motion to close the public comment session on 5.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Rotello. And all those in favor of closing the session, please say aye.
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 Anyone? No one. I see no one in the negative. No abstentions. Motion passes unanimously. We will be moving on to a committee of the whole in just a moment. With that being said, all public comment sessions, item 1 through 5, are open and closed. I'll entertain a motion to close this meeting this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Made by Mr. Knapp, seconded by Mr. Tabersack. All those in favor of closing the public comments on items 1 through 5, signify by aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention, and thank you to the members of the public for taking the time to write down and submit your comments. All right. So that being said, we're going to go to committee of the whole. I'm going to ask for about 10 seconds here to take another drink, and then we will start there. All right. So I hereby at let's see, it is 8:03. Open the committee of the whole. The committee of the whole is going to consist of items number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Item number 2, an ordinance appropriating $3 million for public improvements in the 2021-2022 capital budget and authorizing the issuance of $3 million of bonds to the city to meet said appropriations and pending the issuance made thereof of making temporary borrowings for such purpose. The senior tax freeze, Code of Ordinance, Section 18-12.1.1, the 2021 Neighborhood Assistance Act, and the Governmental Entities Code of Ordinance, Section 2-259. I will just do a quick update of the roll, and then we will go into the item number 2, or item number 1, 2 from the previous agenda. Just please confirm your attendance. Mr. Alves?
Present.
You're still here, thank you. Mr. Bezade?
Present.
Mr. Mike Esposito?
Present.
Mr. Levy?
Present.
Mr. Salvatore?
Present.
Mrs. Stanley?
Present.
Mr. Tabersack?
Present.
Mr. Fox?
Present.
Mr. Priola? Mr. Henry?
Present.
Mr. DiGilio is here. Mr. Rotella?
Here.
Mr. Visconti? I see Fred still.
Here.
Yep. Mr. Palma?
Here.
Mr. Knapp?
Here.
Mr. John Esposito?
Here.
Mr. Santos?
Present.
Mr. Perkins?
Present.
Mr. Cheney's?
Present.
Mrs. Camissa?
Here.
And Mr. Molinaro?
Here.
Excellent. Just let the record note, we have 20 in attendance. Mr. Priola is absent. So the ordinance for $3 million for public improvements, we finished the public hearing on that. I will entertain a motion on that item.
Mr. President.
Mr. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I move to recommend adoption of the ordinance for $3 million in public improvements and the issuance of $3 million in bonds of the city to meet such obligations and to make temporary borrowings for such purpose.
Second.
That was seconded by Nancy Camissa. We'll have discussion at this time. Are there any questions?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Esposito, floor is yours.
thank you. I'd just like to ask the obvious question, what public improvements will be made with the $3 million? I didn't see Mr. Idarola present, so perhaps the chief of staff from the mayor's office, Mr. Esposito, could chime in on that.
He's there.
Sure, and I will just, I'll be happy to turn it over to, Mr. Idarola is on the call, but.
Oh, okay, I didn't see him. Yeah, so if he could, elaborate on that, that'd be excellent. Thanks.
Mr. Idarola, are you available? I see his name there. Okay, well, in Mr. Idarola's absence, maybe I can help.
Through the chair, I can address that if you wish.
Mr. St. Hilaire, go right ahead.
Okay. There's a few projects on there. They're all listed in the capital section of their budget under notes. If you go back to page 392 in the budget, you'll see it. It's in the column called notes. And there's a few projects. I'll list those off. First is the citywide generator replacement program for $350,000. The second is the equipment replacement program for the highway department, $450,000. Road improvements is the third one for $1,250,000. The underground storage, I'm sorry, the underground storage tanks for $450,000. That's an underground storage tank replacement program. And then the fire department facilities improvements and planning for $500,000. For a total of $3 million for the FY22 proposed bond authorization.
Thank you, Mr. St. Hilaire.
Okay, you're all set, Mr. Esposito? Okay,
Yes, Mr. President.
okay. Any other questions on the $3 million bond ordinance?
Mr. President, I do.
Mr. Cheney, the floor is yours.
Thank you. David or Antonio, can you give us a better description of the fire department facilities improvement and planning? What are you planning for?
Yeah, that's we know that there's various improvements that are needed in all of the fire department buildings. It's not just the headquarters. That we're not really referring specifically to one building or even the headquarters. This is for, and it's not to the paid buildings either. It's to all the volunteer buildings and to the city buildings as well. So it really encompasses all of that, and but it addresses the building itself. And it really is also for planning. So we know that we're working with the volunteer departments right now on dealing with planning issues. And the fire chief is trying to undertake that endeavor in cooperation with the volunteer fire departments. So this would allow for some flexibility in dealing with that long-term project.
Just a follow-up, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Does this include any planning for a new fire station?
Well, I mean, that is obviously you can't get a new fire station for 500,000. So
No, planning, like our planning.
the planning, yes, I'm sorry, you're correct. The planning, yes, it would allow for that kind of thing. Doing some scoping, the groundwork, looking for sites, or looking at easements, or just looking at all the facilities, doing your inventory and deciding what to do with all these buildings. And as you're consolidating, you're going to have some buildings, and what's the best way to go forward with these vacant buildings, because some of these buildings are ours, and if we can then turn around and sell these buildings and take those proceeds and plow it back into the program, how far would that take us? But we need to get a value of all these things, So that's it. Really, that's why we left it broad, and the description is in the bond itself, and in the budget too, I believe. So you want to take a look at that. But we so we looked at the building envelope, and really the planning for both the paid and the volunteer services.
Thank you, Mr. President.
See Mr. Perkins with his hand up. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to follow up on what Councilman Chinisi just said. So through the chair to Mr. St. Hilaire, so this would be considered part of capital improvement and not something that the fire department's budget would typically handle. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. One more question, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. St. Hilaire again. So as part of the inventory collection of information and planning that was just mentioned, that will all be conducted in-house. We don't need to hire any kind of consultants.
Oh no, I would assume that consultants would likely be involved. We'll do as much as we can in-house, as we always do. Antonio's got a talented crew down there, so he'll work with the fire chief and make that determination of what he can do in-house. What if he has people ready to go off the bench, and then determine if what consultants to bring in.
Okay, and if we decide to go that way, whomever we decide to go with, it would be part of a bidding process. Would that also be true?
Most of the time it is, but we also have on-call vendors. It depends on the amount of what that consultant may be. If it's a minimal amount and we have an on-call available, we may utilize that. I mean, we do that for certain environmental type of things. It all depends on what that need is, but typically things would go out for bid. That's our typical process.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Would that need to come before this body, or that's something that you do?
Typically not, no.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sandler. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions for this item? Mr. Santos, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess this would go to Mr. St. Hilaire as well. I actually did read my budget, and I know that on the items you mentioned on 377 here, I have two questions. So highway paving, drainage, road improvements, and it's partially from the SNAP bond. I do understand that. Now, did we have a specific list of roads that we're going to be making some improvements to?
Well, there's not a specific list, and Antonio doesn't provide necessarily a specific list because he never knows from one winter to the next. Unless it's a major project planned in advance, like he's doing a major reconstruction on something. But the winter takes its toll, so he may need to have he definitely needs a lot of flexibility on his planning. That doesn't mean it shifts it from this year off 5 years. It just means he needs to have the flexibility of time because of the weather impacts on these roads. And you could have washouts, you could have a lot of different things, or you got another big project, like for example, what's going on downtown. You may shift some stuff to kind of leverage a major project that's going on elsewhere, so you can minimize your cost on doing a road replacement. So that's why putting out a list and painting yourself into that corner it can be a little bit difficult at times.
Yeah, I understand that. I think it would be good though for us here and the public in general just to have some kind of sense of where we're going. I understand we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into a specific area and say that we're going to do it and then we can't. But I tend to agree with what the public comment that Mr. Brown had, that we should have some kind of direction, at least, of what improvements we're planning on. So I appreciate your answer on that. I do have one more question, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President.
The floor is yours.
As far as I'm going to piggyback off of what Councilman Chenise asked about the fire department planning, facilities planning there, the 500,000 portion of this. Is any of that towards any of the consolidation efforts by the volunteer fire departments at the moment?
I would suspect that will be part of the bigger plan. I think that's when this money was put in there, certainly a portion of it is, looking at that.
Okay, but we don't know specifically if it's going to any.
We don't know what the specific needs are of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what part of the planning piece is.
All right.
And I think there's still more legwork to be done on that to determine what the specific needs are.
Okay. Okay. I guess that's satisfactory. Thank you very much.
Are there any other comment or any other discussion?
Mr. President,
I'm sorry, Mr. Rotello?
Yeah, just briefly, David, could you just remind people, especially people tuning in on YouTube, what UST replacement program is?
Oh, certainly. That's the underground storage tanks. They're the fuel tanks. Basically, we're really required to pull those out of the ground. And, these things have been put in the ground decades ago. And we have to make sure they're not leaking into the ground, and they have new tanks now. If we are going to put them back into the ground, they're triple line tanks. They're totally different tanks than what used to be in the ground. If we put them in the ground, we may do above ground ones. You see some of those around town with our buildings. So these things cost a lot of money because you have to test all the ground around there. You have to make sure the tank hasn't leaked, and you have to dispose of it properly. So, this is just a portion of the project itself. I think the total project is I think $1.1 million, and most of it is going to be funded by a grant, by the way. The 450 is a lot of that will likely be recovered. Like the 1.1, I think it's probably 70% covered by a grant. So a portion of this will come back. And we'll just put it right back into the replacement program, because we do have other tanks throughout the city that need to be replaced. similar to what we did with the roof replacement program and the bridge replacement program. So it'll be on another CIP program in a future budget. You guys will look at it, review it, approve it. And then that's the only time we can tap that money is after we get the money back, we'll put it and we'll say, well, we're going to apply it against another underground storage tank in the future, the replacement of the underground storage tank in the future.
Yeah, that's the city's been doing this for decades now, and we're putting in the double line tanks and the monitoring systems and all that stuff. Do we have are we on a timetable now that we just pull them after 15 years or something like that? Or are we still doing them as needed?
No, I think there is a time. We are on a timetable, and I can't tell you the specifics, but we are on a timetable to replace these, and that's why we're and we try to group them together again to get better value in the project that we're doing. And certainly, hopefully, there's usually grants that pop up every so many years, and it helps us do more of these type of projects at the same time. So even though
nobody wants an environmental disaster on their hands, but the program it's shockingly expensive, and the alternatives are. Yeah, I don't even know what the alternatives are. If you put one above ground, you're looking at security concerns at that point. Right. I actually prefer them in the ground, but boy, oh boy, do they cost a lot of money. All right, thank you, David. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other comments?
Mr. President?
Mr. Chianese for the second time.
Thank you. Just a quick question to David. I'm into paving this year. So what's left in our bonds for paving besides what we're proposing here?
Yeah, we're still doing pretty good on what's remaining in our paving. As you know, with the SNAP money, we still have the PW grant money. We tapped it pretty good over the last couple of years, and that's what led us to the SNAP bond. So the program, and I do have the historical spend on all these projects and how much we really went. Our program was accelerated over the last few years, and it really stands out. So
is that information in the bond, in the budget, or
it's not in the budget, but I can run something for you so you can see that. And I hope as part of what I was showing you the other night to make that available at some point so you can see it right online. And but a lot of the grouping I've had to do manually and maintain it manually because you can't group it like that in our system. So that's why it's taking a little bit of time. But it looks really good now, but it's just making sure everything's in sync. That's all.
Okay, yeah. So if you can give us that, because I don't think $1.2 million is a lot.
No, it's not. That's why we do it in many different pieces. So you'll see, that's why we do some from bonds, we do some from the grants. We have some from our previous issues, pay-goes. It really is an accumulation of different funding sources to make up the road replacement program, the road improvement program.
All right, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you.
Thank you. With no other discussion, I'll try your minds on the motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?
Mr. President, I have to abstain because of the information we found out tonight, and I'm the president of one of the battalions.
Okay, just for the record, Mr. Salvatore is abstaining and all other members are voting in favor. Motion passes. Thank you. The next item number 3, I'll entertain a motion on the tax freeze for the elderly homeowners. Councilman Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to recommend the adoption of the amendment to the Code of Ordinances, Section 44, 2021-53 to extend the tax-free program for elderly homeowners through the filing of the October 1, 2020 grand list.
Second.
Second.
I didn't catch the second. I'm sorry.
That was me, Mr.
I'll
Mayor.
second that, Mr. President.
All right, Mr. Esposito on the second. I'll entertain discussion at this time.
Mr. President, if I may.
Mr. Esposito, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Through you to Mr. St. Hilaire, for the folks watching on YouTube and for the public record, when is the enrollment period for this program?
Right now, as soon as you guys approve it, you can enroll in it.
Yep.
Well,
There's a deadline though?
The deadline, I believe, is probably in
May
June,
15th.
May 15th. Is that right?
Yeah.
I was going to say June, but it's May 15th. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any other discussion on this item?
What?
Mr.
If I can.
Haversack?
Okay, I would just like to say this is one of the fine programs I think the city has done. We say that when things are bad economically and all, we look to help out the most vulnerable people, and it is a pretty generous program because I think a little over $50,000 of a proper individual, if you're at the right agents, meet the other requirements, and you get to like the 2011, something like that, tax rates. And certainly at this time, I mean, we're targeting a population that really is very effective and helpful. So this is one of the things I'm proud that we as a city have done.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Molinaro?
Yes, sir. Could we just go over how someone would apply for this for the benefit of our people on YouTube?
Sure. Mr. St. Hilaire?
Sure. Is the tax assessor on?
I do not see her.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the best thing to do, the tax assessor's office really handholds everyone on this program. And really, they do a fantastic job in providing the service on this. And because it's not as simple as do you qualify? They walk you through all the other programs that are being offered, and really that's what makes this program so difficult to administer, because you got to look at everything else and then you look at this. And so it really, it does add a tremendous benefit to the seniors. And it's we haven't found anything better to replace it with yet, because we mentioned this last year, and the new assessor is reviewing it to see if there's something that we can do to help make it more easily from an administrative point for everyone involved, the applicant and the city, and that it gets to the intended recipient, because some people are getting an extremely large benefit, and then some people are getting a small benefit. And it's because it's compounding all the other benefits, and it gets away from the intent after a while. So, but we don't have anything better, and we don't want to harm those who are on it, and so that's the dilemma that we're in. So that's why we do a lot of hand-holding, walking through it, Councilman. And so I would encourage everyone that is interested in it to really talk to the assessor's office, and they will advise you on whether this program is in fact the best one for you or some other program.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody in the negative? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And the next item is the Neighborhood Assistance Act. I will entertain a motion on that item.
Mr. President,
Mr. Knapp.
thank you, Mr. President. I move to recommend the adoption of the resolution authorizing approved and listed agencies to apply for and receive funding in the form of tax credits from the state of Connecticut through the Neighborhood Assistance Program.
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Visconti. We'll open up discussion. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll try your minds. All those in favor as presented? Please say
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody in the negative? Any abstentions? Seeing none then, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I will remind everybody that item 1 of the city budget and item 5 of the government entities review committee are not part of the committee of the whole, as they all have their own ad hoc committees assigned. The budget about to be done next week, and the government entities already convening was a product of that prior. So with that being said, we have no further business tonight. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Made
Second.
by Paul, seconded by Nancy Camissa. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 Seeing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.